Well, this morning I'm going to go ahead and readdress Nan. And basically, I want to talk about why my economic program is far better than anybody else's. Now, notwithstanding people out there trying to figure out the complexities of voting, because some people are in states and the candidate that they're voting for, basically, or their party candidate, is way ahead, which means that if your candidate is 11 points ahead, they don't need all those votes. They just need the 51%, which means if you're monitoring the poll situations and you look and you go, they got 56% of the vote standard. You could sit there and say, well, it's almost like your extra vote ain't going to matter one way or another. I'm going to tell you it does. Your vote does. Because that's when you want to start thinking about voting for other parties because of issues development. It's very important for the future of issues development to be able to see that there are people that are very interested in other types of issues. Very important. Now, I usually like to focus on the keys of certain things and understand that, there are different types of priorities. And right now, one of our chief priorities is economic stabilization. So, I'm just booking the same plan that I have been booking since 2005. So when I first ran for president for the 2008 election sequence, this is basically the same plan. It's all the same plan. So when I talk about the 7-house program, guaranteed loans for vested citizens for 7 houses. People wonder, what are vested citizens? Vested citizens are people that have been in the military, people that have one or more of their parents that basically date back 150 years or more. That means long-term vestation. People have paid taxes for long periods of time. They're vested. They've been here. They've been involved in the project of building the nation and protecting the nation. It's a long-term item. A lot of sweat, a lot of blood. So that's part of vestation. Because in many people's view, they believe that people who've been continuously putting into the kitty for decades and decades and decades are a little bit different priority-wise than people that just arrived. It's nice to be nice to people who've just arrived. But the reality is, I'm one of those people, I'm exasperated that we have people dying in cardboard boxes that are entitled to compensation and never receive that compensation. And those people would not be where they are if they were not cheated out of what belonged to them. So that deals with a base understanding of vestation. Now, under my plan, there's no such thing as loan discrimination. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're a disabled person, and that's the way you were born, your parents or an assigned advocate or a chosen advocate, which, can be almost anybody in many cases, would have the right to opt for your future participation as a vested citizen with vested rights. Now, this means a lot of things. This basically means that if you're disabled, for instance, your parents, let's keep it simple, basically could oversee a home building project for you. Now, granted, your income status, as it is, you have an income guaranteed for life because you're a disabled person. Now, that needs to be respected and not discriminated against. You have an income for life. That's bankable. That's bankable. So basically working with a financial project where that fits is wise. Now, frankly, the way I look at it is most disabled people can still do a little bit here, a little bit there. They can do something. And that means they can still get a premium wage off of doing something for those projects. So this means you can still have your house built. You have experts brought in. You have the project overlooked by the advocate that basically works as the project controller. And this brings in a stable, long-term, permanent financial controlled system. And then you as a disabled person, you still get the equity from the generation because you're still building it at wholesale. It should always be worth more retail than the value to build it, because that's the wholesale value. So if the property gets sold, the retail value should be more, and you would realize more cash income from that. So moving forward, the overall plan that I do is that it's completely different than the Harris plan. The Harris plan just prints money, $25,000 times, I believe, 25 million. Well, that will cause a huge disaster economically very rapidly, because the first thing that's going to happen is people are saying you're printing money and there's no backing behind it, there's no logic. So this is going to cause inflation, massive inflation. You're going to have all those people that invest in the stock market and the metals, the golds and silver. They're going to scream and they're going to point and they're going to say you're diluting the dollar. There's no counterbalance to this, no counterbalance. And it's going to cause, and that's exactly what it's going to do, is cause inflation. And that means that people who are poor are going to be forced into worse positions than they are right now, because prices are going to race forward. That means rents are going to go up, all products will go up, food's going to go up, everything's going to go up. So that's not a good plan. Stepping back to Mikey's plan here, the Crosby plan. Again, it's based upon building brand new hard assets. This means you can print to build. This is our old forefather plan, which, by the way, is similar to what the Chinese started 22 years ago. They saw what our forefathers were doing, and they started doing print to build. And they now have, I think, 74 million structures that are vacant. 74 million structures. Now, granted, they've got 1.4 billion people as a population, but still, the enormity of that. So, it has always been constitutionally somebody's right to build their own home with their own hands. In fact, it was a base necessity. If you're an Indian, you had to build a teepee, or the weather elements might kill you. And it's the same thing. 1750, settlers had to build. You had to build structures, or the winter would kill you. This is not a game. This was a necessity for you to be able to build yourself. This concept people are pushing that it's a dream, that maybe by age 65 you can own a home, is a big lie. Because nowadays, the average person should have no problem whatsoever building a house in 6 months. So 2 houses a year, yes. If you're an actual carpenter, 3 houses a year. I've talked to plenty of carpenters who do it. So this plan, which I'm going to go ahead and mention it because I had people that would question, because the base plan is a statistical average of building a structure brand new. On average, it'd be worth about $300,000. It's a nationwide average. The way I was looking at the statistics, cost about $210,000 to bring in that construction. That's land, labor. Now, basically, that leaves $90,000 in equity. So if you sell the house, you'd get another $90,000. You don't sell the house, that equity's still yours, you got it. Now, you can take the work yourself, and here's where the questions come in, because the way I laid it out, people were going to end up with another $30,000 in basically control bonuses. That's you being the developer builder and doing some of the work yourself. Now, some people have been asking, well, what if we want to do more of the work ourselves? Yes, you can do that. It's very easy to end up doing a lot more of the work, where you end up making a total of $60,000 cash and you still have the $90,000 in equity. So now you're talking about having a minimum overall of $150,000 income if you liquidate and sell it and go to the next project per year. So the guarantee is for 7 houses, that you'd be able to build 7 houses, 1 a year for the vested citizens. So basically, this is about max production, because basic carpentry skills were something the average 12 to 14-year-old had to build a 2-bedroom house in 1750. And I'm not going to listen to other people's lies and say that that's not an easy skill for people to do. We've screwed up on the school system. So now the way this works out is that when you create a new hard asset, the government does an assessment on it. And at a federal level, people think about the county assessment, all this, but at the federal level, every time you create $300,000 in assets, as a rule of thumb, the government will print $90,000 in new cash. But there's a balance there because you've created a new asset. So this does not cause any devaluation of currency whatsoever. So this basically is one of the original ways that our forefathers designed our system to work and for the government to get money. Now, doing this plan, my plan is to get 75 million structures underway. Now, this lays out in several different ways. Now, first of all, I talked about the 90,000 the government's going to print on the counterbalance to facilitate trade. We're going to be able to pay off the national debt. This is going to basically increase the value of our money. This is very important. This is going to make our currency worth more money. It's going to be a hedge towards inflation. It works completely different. The Crosby plan is completely different than the Harris plan. Now, some people are going to want to do different things. They're going to say, I've already got a house, or we inherited our parents' house. It's not necessarily where we're going to want to stay. Got a little extra land to it. We'd like to add a few more bedrooms to the property. Fine. That works out with the plan well. And these plan loans are designed to be balloon at the end, 30-year balloon. This means 50% of the loan value is a balloon at the end. Now, you can also do a lever, which is graduated payments. This drops the initial payments down even smaller, but this is a completely controlled and solid engineered hard asset development plan. So there's going to be other people that are going to say that they want to put on their property an in-law structure. That's fine too. That's another way of constructing. You can have other people say, hey, I want to build a garage, don't have one, or I want to make a bigger garage. I want a shop. I want a craft building. I want to build a small archive. I want to build a this or that. There's a lot of other structure types that qualify into this. It's about building hard assets. Now, my plan also deals with being able to buy different things. For instance, you're going to also incorporate into this things like appliances. So this means that the appliances can also be put forward on the 30 years. So you're going to include an array of appliances that are also included. So that's where you have to be pretty wise with what you choose on the appliances. Surely, at some point in time, somebody's going to want to offer a deal for a 30-year guaranteed appliance deal. And that means that you'll pay more, but it's going to have to be guaranteed, and it's going to have to make sure that there's a buffer fund to guarantee that they don't go bankrupt. Way to work that in. Now, I also include in the plan that are in appliances, computers. Basically, you're going to need computers. I have a different plan where every citizen needs 5 computers, and it's a compensation plan because the government is responsible for the backdoor problems that we have today because they wanted to monitor terrorists, which isn't working anymore. I think a lot of people figured that out. And we need to repair that damage to people's lives. Enhance people with language model capabilities, all kinds of capabilities, because the Chinese and the people in India, that comes to 2.8 billion people, are going to be very vigorously going after. In fact, the truth is, we're behind by numbers. We are dramatically outnumbered. The Chinese outnumber us 200 million. They got that much extra on people that are working with the new computer technology, AI, language models, etc. We have to fix that. So it's not as expensive as some people might think. We're talking investments of $3,000 or less, but it's built in a 30 years. So this means that there's other features of your home that can be included into the 30 year. Now, as for the additional structures, some people might want to have a second home. They have relatives across the country. They end up building various projects that can be, I would describe them as moderate project. And you can sell some of them and upgrade to a different way. You could rent them out, or you could do the B&B, bed and breakfast type situation. Now, it's also important to bring out the difference between the Crosby versus Harris program, because the Crosby program works no matter what. I become president, I'm going to enforce constitutional law. This is different than the Harris program, which is proposing to do something, and then basically they have to go to Congress and then the Senate to get approval, which means she can bring out any kind of plan she wants on these large scales. And the way she's doing it, there's no guarantee that Congress and the Senate will back the plans. That means no guaranteed stimulus. Under the Crosby plan, we have a guaranteed stimulus because it's part of a compensation package. It encompasses a various array of series of understandings of constitutional law. Among some of these things, like people are talking about reparations. I've constantly updated and looked at reparations stuff, and there's lots of different claims. You got the Indian claims, you got the black slaves claims, you got the white slaves claims. You've got the people that, different types of illegal contract servitude claims. You've got a lot of different types of claims that come into this. And to save you from all the complexity, there's a whole lot of legal arguments that basically bring things to a head where it becomes a no-brainer, where it's enforcement of law. Because a lot of what we have a problem with right now is the lack of enforcement of law. So basically, you want the Crosby plan because it's a more encompassing, a more carte blanche, so to speak, a setup of guaranteed stimulus.